Before Australia had its own money, things were a bit messy. People used all sorts of coins from other countries. British coins were common, of course. But you might also find coins from India, the Netherlands, and many other places. This made trading complicated. Imagine trying to buy bread when the shopkeeper had to figure out what your strange coin was worth. After Australia became a single country in 1901, a big decision was made. The new nation needed its own money. It was a symbol of independence, a way to say, "We are Australia." So, the government started a project to create Australian coins, including the humble but important penny. The very first Australian pennies were not actually made in Australia. The country didn't have a proper mint ready for such a big job. So the first pennies were struck in London, England in 1911. They were made of bronze, a strong and lasting metal. These coins then travelled a long way across the sea to reach Australian shores. When they arrived, they were a big deal. For the first time, Australians had a penny that was truly their own. It had the words, "Commonwealth of Australia" on it. This was a proud moment for the young country, a small but powerful sign of its new identity on the world stage. The design of this first penny was simple and classic. On one side, it had the head of the British monarch, King George V. This showed that Australia was still part of the British Empire. It was a link to the old country. But the other side was different. It didn't have a picture. It just had words inside a circle, stating the coin's value. 1 penny. This straightforward design was easy for everyone to understand. It was practical and did its job well. This first penny set the stage for all the Australian coins that would follow, a small piece of metal that carried the weight of a nation's hopes. These early pennies quickly became part of everyday life. They jingled in pockets and purses all across the vast continent. Children used them to buy lollies at the corner store. Adults used them to buy newspapers or a cup of tea. The penny was the coin of the people. It was involved in millions of small transactions every single day. Its constant presence made it a familiar object, a part of the daily routine for almost everyone. The penny wasn't just money. It was woven into the fabric of Australian society from its very beginning, a silent witness to the nation's growth and daily struggles. For many years, the penny's design stayed the same. It was reliable, but perhaps a little boring. After King George V died, his son King George VI became the new monarch. His portrait appeared on the coins, but a bigger change was coming. In 1938, Australia decided to give the penny a new look. The country wanted a design that was more Australian, something that represented the unique land and its animals. A competition was held to find a new design for the back of the coin. An artist named George Kruger Gray had a brilliant idea. He suggested using an animal that everyone knew was from Australia. His winning design featured a kangaroo. Not just any kangaroo, but one captured in mid-hop. This image was dynamic and full of energy. It perfectly captured the spirit of the Australian outback. The kangaroo became an instant icon. It was a symbol of Australia's unique wildlife and its wide open spaces. People loved it. The penny was no longer just a boring coin with words on it. It was now a small piece of art that celebrated the nation's identity. This new penny, with the king on one side and a leaping kangaroo on the other, became the standard for decades to come. The kangaroo design meant a lot to Australians. During World War II, it became a symbol of home for soldiers fighting far away. A penny in a soldier's pocket was a small reminder of the country they were defending. The kangaroo represented freedom and the rugged, untamed spirit of their homeland. For people back in Australia, it was a symbol of national pride during a difficult time. The simple image of the kangaroo connected everyone. It showed that even in the darkest of times, the heart of Australia was still beating strong and resilient as the iconic animal itself. This design was so beloved that it stayed on the penny for the rest of its life. Even when Queen Elizabeth II came to the throne in 1953, the kangaroo remained. Her portrait replaced her father's on the front, but the kangaroo kept leaping on the back. It had become too important to change. For generations of Australians, the penny was the kangaroo coin. It was the coin they used to learn how to count. It was the coin they saved in piggy banks. The image of the kangaroo was etched into the national memory, all thanks to a simple penny. The history of the penny also has some interesting twists, especially during World War II. Making coins takes a lot of metal and resources. During the war, Australia's mints in Melbourne and Perth were very busy. They had to make equipment and ammunition for the war effort. They didn't have the time or the materials to make all the pennies the country needed. So Australia asked for help. Just like in the beginning, they had to look overseas. But this time, they didn't go to London. Instead, they asked mints in India to help produce pennies for Australia between 1942 and 1943. These pennies made in India look a little different. They have a small dot on them to show where they were made. Pennies from the Bombay Mint have a small dot under the kangaroo's tail. Those from the Calcutta Mint have a tiny letter I for India under the king's head. These wartime pennies tell a fascinating story of global cooperation during a time of crisis. They are a physical reminder of how the war affected everything, even the small coins in people's pockets. Collectors today look for these pennies as they are a special part of Australian history, connecting the country to the wider story of the war. The most famous story in the penny's history is about the legendary 1930 penny. This penny is the king of Australian coins. It is incredibly rare and valuable. In 1930, Australia was in the middle of the Great Depression. The economy was terrible and people had very little money. Because of this, the government decided not to make any new pennies that year. However, a very small number, perhaps a handful, were accidentally made at the Melbourne Mint. Nobody is exactly sure how it happened. Some think they were made to test the coin-making machines. For years, nobody knew these pennies existed. Then, in the 1940s, a collector discovered one. The news spread like wildfire. A treasure hunt began. People started checking every penny they found, hoping to find a 1930. Finding one was like winning the lottery. Today, the 1930 penny is worth a fortune. It's a symbol of how something ordinary can become extraordinary. The story of this rare penny adds a layer of magic and mystery to the history of this common coin. It reminds us that treasure can be found in the most unexpected places, even in a jar of old change. All good things must come to an end, and so it was for the Australian penny. By the 1960s, the world was changing. Australia decided it was time to update its money system. The old system of pounds, shillings and pence was complicated. It was based on British tradition. The government wanted a simpler system. So they decided to switch to decimal currency. This meant dollars and cents. This was a huge change for the country. On February 14, 1966, Australia officially switched over. The penny, along with all the old coins, was withdrawn from circulation. The main reason for getting rid of the penny was simple. It was no longer practical. In the new decimal system, the smallest coin was the 1 cent piece. A penny was worth less than 1 cent. On top of that, the cost of making a bronze penny was becoming more than the penny was actually worth. The government was losing money on every single one it produced. It just didn't make sense anymore. The new, smaller, lighter coins were more efficient. The era of the big, heavy copper penny was over. Its job was done. After 1966, Australians had to get used to a new way of paying for things. The pennies that were collected were melted down. The metal was used for other purposes. It was a sad end for a coin that had been part of life for over 50 years. But people didn't forget it. Many Australians kept jars and tins full of the old pennies. They kept them for good luck or just for the memories. These old coins became keepsakes. They were a link to the past, a reminder of a time when you could buy a bag of lollies for just a few pennies. Today, the penny is a beloved piece of Australian history. You can't spend it in shops anymore, but it holds a different kind of value. For older Australians, it brings back memories of their childhood. For coin collectors, it's a fascinating subject with rare dates and interesting stories. The famous lucky penny is still a part of the culture. Many people think of the penny with fondness. It was more than just money. It was a symbol of a growing nation, a witness to war and peace, and a familiar friend in the pockets of generations of Australians. The kangaroo still leaps on, not in our wallets, but in our memories.